Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Hello, everyone. Today I have a special guest, Lindsay Wong. Lindsay is a Canadian writer whose memoir, The Woo Woo, How I Survived Ice Hockey, Drug Raids, Demons, and My Crazy Chinese Family was published in 2018. The book won the 2019 Hubert Evans Non-Fiction Prize, was a finalist for Canada Reads 2019, and was shortlisted finalist for the 2019 Hilary Weston's Writers' Trust Prize for Nonfiction. And Lindsay's next book, Tell Me Pleasant Things About Immortality, is coming out soon in 2023. And now, welcome, Lindsay. So before we start talking about Tell Me Pleasant Things About Immortality, can you tell us, has life changed after publishing The Woo Woo?
Well, thanks so much for having me on the podcast, and it's so great to meet in person. Well, it's funny because people always think that when you publish a book, your life will dramatically change. What happens is that you just get busier. So
No, don't ruin our dreams.
yeah, it's true. I get 10 times more emails than I did before. I have more followers on social media. People ask you to do a lot of things like readings and interviews, and it's not all paid. So you just get a lot of things to do. So I would say my life is a lot busier. I sleep less. I don't think I've slept since 2018.
Okay.
So I'm very lucky if I get 5 hours of sleep a night. So when you publish a book, you will just be very busy. You might be broke, and you might have insomnia. That's what happens. Real talk.
Life of a writer. Okay. So are you writing full time these days, or are you doing something else as well?
I wish I was writing full time. That feels like the dream to me. Like if I could just wake up every day, put on my pajamas, and sit in front of a blank screen, I would do that and just eat junk food, right? That's my ideal life in 5 years. I teach creative writing right now at the University of Winnipeg. And so a lot of the times, I'm getting up to go to class. It's in person now, right? So I actually have to put on pants. I would just love to stay home on Zoom and just like put on a top and just like, pajama pants maybe. But that means, going to class, talking to students, going to a lot of department meetings, the life of an academic. And whenever I have time or I'm home, I get to write. But it's about balancing a lot of hats, I think.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, I'm thinking about all the English professors I've had, and I don't think I've had anyone that was Asian. So it's really great that, you're able to represent in the field. So
yeah, same. I think I had only one Asian prof, or one or two in grad school. But other than that, most creative writing professors are usually white, and you're not allowed to write speculative fiction. So in my classes, my students are writing horror, romance, crime thriller. And so it's been really fun so far.
Yeah, I'm just thinking myself like, I remember wanting to go into English for my degree in university. My parents were like, I don't think so. So I went to science, but I love science too, so that's okay. All right.
That's great.
I know.
I wish I could do science. You're like multi-talented. You can do science and writing.
Yeah, exactly. My background's nuclear medicine, so I got to inject a lot of people. But anyhow, I've left the field for now. It was too much radiation.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I can tell you some strange stories, but maybe after the interview. So can you tell us a little bit about your latest book? And you have a lot of different types of stories in there. Like, how did you decide what to include in the book, and why did you think about doing this instead of writing another novel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good question. Well, I think I've always been really drawn to the idea of horror and uncanny. So much of my upbringing was about ghosts, right? And so I'd written a memoir previously, and so for this short story collection was really about taking all these family stories, mythology, the ghost stories, and making them real, right? So horror is a metaphor for daily life, right? Especially, for BIPOC people. And so much of Asian culture is about ghosts. And I think the short story genre, I just felt very I guess, natural for me because I was writing this book while the woo-woo was getting rejected. Um, so while, I'm sure many of you all know, like when you send it out to like agents or on your submission, it takes months and months and months, right? And so you have a lot of time. I mean, you could start a novel, but then it when you get notes back from your agent or whatever to fix the other manuscript, it doesn't make sense to just like completely abandon the project. Or short stories, you can do them when you only have a couple of weeks or a month, right? And so that's sort of how I was able to assemble a collection. And I think for me, it was really about once I'd written maybe five or six, I realized that I had a theme going on, like they're about different things. But I was really writing about inherited trauma and all these things that happen, right, to um, women of color in the past and also in the present. And so then I was able to kind of assemble them.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about what the book is about, without giving too much away?
hmm I would just say I've been calling it immigrant horror stories because horrible things happen to the people in the stories. They never get what they want, right? They always want something. Um, and whether they're a zombie or a ghost or living, they're still very human, right? So in so many ways, the story is about trauma and how we carry it, whether or not we immigrate from Asia to Canada or Asia to the States, that we're always carrying that trauma and family secrets and history, so we can never really escape the past. So it really became a metaphor for that.
Did you do any special research for any of the stories, or?
Um, I think a lot of it was really based on, family mythology. Um, my uncle, for example, he was in a concentration camp. And of course, when people are in a concentration camp, he had escaped Vietnam to Hong Kong. And, you talk story, right? And so much of that, suffering and horror becomes, an actual demon. So I was able to really take that and play with the themes in his life. And then I don't think I really did much research in terms of actual research. Of course, I was on Wikipedia, checking facts, history, talking to friends and family and asking them, have you heard of this? Is this correct? I'm not fluent in Chinese, so
Oh, okay.
often it means like, did I translate this correctly?
Oh,
So
yeah, I was gonna
that's what
suggest,
I
like,
mean by like
yeah,
with creative writers, right? It's not like sitting down being serious research like most academics. A lot of it is just like, is this right?
yeah. I think, well, because I watch a series, I think it was called Exorcist Meter on TVB. It's Cantonese,
Oh,
but I know there's English subtitles. It's about a taxi driver that goes around fighting ghosts and stuff like that.
oh,
But yeah, there's still, I think it was more popular in the 80s and 90s, like all the jumping vampires and stuff like that in Hong Kong cinema. I don't think it's as popular now, but I think there was a lot more mythology back in the day. I don't know.
oh,
Now a lot of the
amazing.
stories, yeah, are about like rich people or like, fighting in the palace, that kind of stuff, right? So,
Oh, nice. Yeah, I should check that out. I've heard of the hopping vampire, right? It's like really slow, but it
yeah,
jumps.
yeah,
Yeah, I always
yeah.
wondered how does it kill people because it's so slow.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to suck your chi energy. Um,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
but it
That
was
makes sense.
based on a real, like, sort of theory that, like, back in the day, because China's such a big country, and if you die in one end and your family wants your body back, then they hire a Taoist priest, and supposedly he made the corpses hop at night by infusing them with energy, so then he does less work while traveling across the country. So I think that's sort of how it came about. And then, yeah, when they get loose, that's when they go crazy and want to attack people.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Maybe my next story will be a hopping vampire.
Okay, so um, this is like an off-topic question. Like, are you doing anything to celebrate the holidays?
I am visiting family in Vancouver. I was I moved to Winnipeg at the end of August for a teaching job. And I think I have to write my next novel this Christmas. Bake cookies, um, eat things. That's what I'm planning to do. I'm just gonna sit and eat and sleep and wear pajamas.
So do you have any other projects that you're working on, or is it going to be another speculative fiction story next for you, or?
Yeah, so I'm working on a novel about these bridesmaids who accidentally sell their soul to a demon bride. So it's a play on Chinese weddings and satire. It's actually based on a true story. I mean, I was asked to be a bridesmaid at a wedding by someone from high school who I had talked to for so many years.
Mhm.
And I wanted to know what would happen. So I said yes to being the maid of honor. And so what followed was a year of indentured servitude. I don't know if you've been a bridesmaid at a wedding, there is so much work, right? It's not fun for anyone involved in the bridal party. And so I wanted to play on that. And it's hopefully going to be a fun, lighter story, but with, supernatural elements.
So did your friend marry like a spirit or something?
No, I turned her in the story. She becomes
Oh,
sort of
okay.
like a demon bride.
Oh, okay, okay.
Um, yeah. So the whole play on Bridezilla.
Yeah, because I have heard of that. Like there's a band in Hong Kong called Beyond, and I think the
Oh.
drummer, his girlfriend died and he married her ghost for I think
Oh, like
about
a
a
ghost
decade or
wedding.
something. Yeah, it was a ghost wedding because she had already passed away.
Oh,
And anyhow, I think he remarried later, like a real person. But he did marry the ghost for a long time. So in a way, it was sort of
yeah.
sweet but sad, that the person isn't there. So
Yeah, no, yeah, I want to play on that idea of ghost marriage too.
okay, Lindsay. So you're going to do a reading from your book, Tell Me Pleasant Things About Immortality. So why don't you give us a little bit of an intro and then you can start reading.
Great. So I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my story, Sinking Houses. It's about a internet order bride who moves to Nebraska City and she accidentally brings apocalypse with her. So um, it's a little bit of an immigrant horror story, I think. There's a mushy hole in my husband's stomach where the chandelier skewered him, and his arms are twisted over his head, paralyzed in a lazy arabesque. His legs look flimsy, crushed beneath the serrated glass. A stiff marionette femur pokes through his pajama pants, jetting through the effusive print of a smiley, self-effacing pineapple. My husband doesn't look dead. He's pale, like a museum-mounted skull, except for a few sprightly pieces of hair. I bend close, tap his forehead. His eyes snap open. They're vampire yellow and wild. I throw a woolly rug over him, mostly so I don't have to look at the hole. He moans that he's too warm and wants me to open a window. What have you done? He rasps in Mandarin. What do you mean? I shoot back. You've just ruined a really expensive rug. This is what I get for agreeing to marry an older man from an international dating site. Ingratitude and paroxysmal blame-mongering. After a month of instant messaging, I said fine, which has apparently cemented my reputation as a pushover. My new husband, Mr. Lim, 62 years, 5'5", likes badminton, Thai food aerobics, has his disposition of a fatherly leprechaun. We met in person just 3 days ago on his cracked pink front porch in Nebraska City. The sky was black and thick like rot, even though it was barely noon. I clasp his icy hand like I would a squirming child's, and I try not to stare where his belly should be. The hole is oozing and making the rug soggy. I won't tell him that the stain looks permanent. My new husband may be bossy and cheap, but he's sometimes kind. He held me when I cried, which was, / is often these past 3 days. He's the only person in this town who speaks any Mandarin. I suspect that I won't have anyone to talk to if / when he dies. You bought the apocalypse to America, Mr. Lim accused me prior to light fixture harpooning him as if he were some luckless sea mammal. We were drinking a bottle of rice wine in our pajamas. We'd almost reached a 911 operator. Then the basement caved in, followed by some of the tiled roof, was shut apart like fish scales. It wasn't at all dramatic, so we laughed. Then a light fixture, a monstrous horn thing, impaled him. Mr. Lim is now pinned down by crystal shards and faux decadent metal in what was once a living room. He looks a little regal, like a surly king flattened by a throne. Yesterday, when the internet was still working and we had running water and electricity, The earth swallowed at least 6 identical subdivisions and 1 town in dull, neighboring Iowa. My husband, who translates the news for me, said it was no big loss to anyone. The houses on our street are bigger and built better for families, Mr. Lim had proclaimed, right before we looked out the living room window, and the neighbor's house shuddered horribly and then sank within 2 minutes. Then he added, gesturing and sighing, their house was much nicer than ours, but that couple had such an ugly baby. Well, I said, after an ice age of silence, too many shifty-eyed glances, should we open the canned peaches? I almost like the gigantic gap in the ceiling. It provides us with an invigorating aerial view. Half of the sun seems to have combusted. Fingers of orange blaze across the gloomy stratosphere. The sky appears to be on fire. You have to get me to a hospital, Mr. Lim suddenly sputters. And I remember that I'm still married. A little red stains his front teeth like hot sauce. How? There's a wheelbarrow in the garage. I don't know how to tell him this is dying old man idiocy. The walls of the house shake again. The last shutter was just a joke. A voluptuous vase with plastic roses bounces to the floor. A chintzy armchair collides into a wall. Bam! Another hole, self-exterior facing. There goes a clicking clock. I don't think the house will last through the night. I want to ask Mr. Lim how much he paid for the rental deposit, and whether we will get some of it back if we survive. I want to know about things like life insurance policy and the petty legal definition of natural disaster in America. We haven't even talked about funeral arrangements. Suddenly, the floor tilts and we tumble. I smash my head, fracture the flat, fleshy rivulet between my eyes on the edge of the old coffee table. Crack. Thank you.
Okay, so Lindsay, why don't you tell us a bit more about your second reading?
This is from a story called Sorry Sister Eunice, where a bunch of sorority girls are disguised as Holly Ching, these 9-tailed fox demons, and they snack on undergrad students. So I'll just read a little bit from it. We call Sister Eunice an anomaly because her rotund form is truly unrecognizable. Her Earth-like circumference and squat stature would probably be the same if someone brainy were to measure her ratio of gravity to girth. All of us 9-tailed fox demons, except for Sister Eunice, are model thin, 5'9", and divinely beautiful in both fox and human form. Plus, like all Holly Ching, we have luxurious manes, angular features, and golden brown eyes. We look permanently photoshopped. Eunice's skin is potholed like a steamed rice cake. Her breath always smells like fermented dairy. The closest we've been to this sort of unpleasing odor was in the 15th century, when lice were rampant in the courts of the Yongle Emperor. Even though none of us want to be Sister Eunice, we think she's hilarious. At group dinner tonight, she shows us her swollen foot and missing shoe. I got so drunk this morning, I fell down the stairs, she says, pushing up her lenses that remind us of laboratory safety goggles. Then I woke up on the lawn and I had lost my jimmied shoe. Oh shit, you poor thing, we all exclaim. We do our best to tolerate Eunice because that's what good families do. Yep, she says, pushing her hair over her face like a shower curtain. 5th time this semester. Come to think of it, Sister Eunice has a bit of a drug and alcohol problem. Actually, we all do. You would too if you were mortal, over 600 years old, and masquerading as a 20-something-old Gen Zer in an all-Asian sorority, Sigma Omicron Pi, at San Francisco State U. For centuries, we Holly Ching have been migrating and shapeshifting into human form. We have traveled through the wild terrains of China, Korea, and Japan, destroying townships, marriages, and political careers with enthusiasm. Behind our penchant for destruction lies a manic appetite for human gristle. Once you've gnawed on a merchant on a ship to India or a hopeful farmer looking for a wife, it's hard to be content with a stomach half empty with rabbit. Fox demons are selfish creatures meant to inhabit caves in the black forests of Xinjiang alone. We are not meant to live as pack members at an old colonial mansion projected by the collegiate moss and the genteel veneer of an ivy tower. It still baffles us that we are forced to share our prey, the frat boy who reeks of beer, and the stoner loner with Dorito breath. We suppose it's just good table manners. During our bi-weekly group dinner, while sucking on tendons and crunching pelvic bones, we want to lunge and tear out each other's throats. But it's against house rules at Sigma Omicron Pi. Thou shalt not kill or maim a Holly Ching sister until threat of extinction is over. By dessert time, which is always raw liver, we think about smothering each other with fluffy pink pillows. By after-dinner drinks, we wonder why we don't just throw ourselves in a window. So Eunice, we say instead, forcing down our instincts for mass homicide and suicide, tell us what happened again to your shoe. What we don't tell Sister Eunice is that one of us stole her right Jimmy Choo after she passed out drinking a dozen rum and cokes. Sometimes, when we're intoxicated, we waltz into campus bars and shake our mortal asses to Ariana Grande and Drake. Sister Cece will badly karaoke to Aretha Franklin, while Sister Tiffany will jam her pink fox tongue down a young visiting scholar's throat. We clutch our gin and tonics to our chests, and because we are masquerading as oversexed sorority girls, we occasionally dry hump one another when we think people are looking. As the night goes on, we loudly sob-sigh for former lives in Asia, for days of no electricity, pre-internet, and the Hollow Jing were influential starters and manipulators of epic wars between fiefdoms. Under the bars of strobe lights, there's a cruel, scorching hope reflected in each of our gleaming corneas. We crave a permanent return to chaos in nature. It's hard to admit that we're practically relevant nowadays, that human beings no longer need the Hollow Ching to system the destruction of their own species. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lindsay. So were those your favorite stories in the book?
Don't know if they were my favorite, but I think sorority girls were really fun to write about, especially those who dine on their students. Not that I'm going to snack on my students.
No. Don't say it. Don't curse yourself. Okay. All right. Well, thank you once again, and
Thank you.
everybody go buy her book, and you have lovely stories in it. Okay. All right. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you. You too.
For more upcoming episodes of the Artsy Raven about writing and publishing, visit us at jfgarage.com/arpodcast. A reminder to Patreon subscribers that there is bonus content available for every episode on the Patreon website. If you enjoyed the show, you can show your appreciation by buying us some digital coffee. The Artsy Raven is produced by J.F. Garrard. The voice in the show's introduction is Chris Gorman, and music is by Tim Moore. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe.